Hi everyone, we still have about 5 minutes to go. We're just waiting on some attendees getting started. So we've got still another 5 minutes to go, so we'll give everyone a couple more minutes before we get started. For those of you who are just joining us, we're just going to wait a couple more minutes for a couple more people to join in. Okay, guys, I see there's more and more people joining, so just sit tight. We don't want to start before so people aren't catching up, but just for those of you who are just signing in now, this webinar will be recorded, and we will be sending out the recording to everyone who's registered. There's also there's going to be time at the end to ask questions as well, so feel free to type some questions in, and Kent will be answering them at the end of the webinar. Everyone, again, I'm on repeat. We're just waiting a minute or so for a couple more people because I see a lot of people joining in right now. So we're just going to give them a second to get settled in. All right, so I think we're good to get started. It's pretty much 7 o'clock right now. So thank you everyone for taking this frigid night to join us to talk about the medication known as proton pump inhibitors. So I'm going to give you an introduction of the speaker tonight, Kent McLeod, one of our clinical pharmacists. So he's a clinical pharmacist. He's actually the founder of NutriChem as well, and he's really been the leader in our NutriChem's deprescribing initiative. So in Ontario, if you're not aware, in the last couple years, there's been a really big push for what's called deprescribing, so safely getting people off of potentially unnecessary medication. So tonight's webinar is going to be focused on a specific type known as proton pump inhibitors, and you're going to learn all about them throughout this webinar, and talk about how to safely deprescribe them. Okay. So like I said before, Kent McLeod, clinical pharmacist, speaking with you tonight. And again, we've teamed up with Briere Hospital in Ontario, so he's going to be talking a little bit about that Some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so everybody will have a chance to, the recording will be sent out to everyone afterwards. So if you want to, listen to it again, or there's some details you missed, don't worry, it will be recorded. You can also ask questions, and they will be answered at the end of the webinar. So feel free to type any questions in the questions or the chat box, and we will be getting to them at the end of the webinar. Okay, so without further ado, here is Kent on tonight's topic.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Again, it's very, very nice to have this technology, isn't it? When it's actually minus 20 or 30 out. So I'm very warm and cozy. So this is quite nice, not having to leave your house when it's so cold out. It's interesting that we call deprescribing something that's relatively new, although I've been deprescribing for some 35 years. I just didn't know what it was. I was very involved early in my career with the inappropriate use of antibiotics. I guess we could have called it deprescribing, or and I kind of have this notion that when I graduated from, with extensive biochemistry and clinical chemistry and clinical pharmacology, that pharmacists should have an integral role because of their extensive training in actually making sure that medications are used when they're responsibly, so that they are causing only good things, not harm. And ultimately, this notion has kind of led me to actually a clinical practice where I feel that it is again the responsibility of any good clinical chemist or pharmacist to actually ensure that anything you put in your body is evidence-based in terms of it making sure that it's going to help you live longer and better, and not do the opposite, make you live shorter and with more risk. So with that in mind, let's just jump right into these drugs called PPIs. So we do have a prescription medication crisis in the country. We actually have prescriptions drugs and medical caused deaths being actually the third leading cause of death in Canada. We actually have an opioid crisis that's all over the news, and what people may not know is that 80% of the users in this current opioid crisis doesn't come from the street, but actually come from people that have been prescribed legal opioids from their health practitioners. On a side note, I mean, I just took a tour of a major marijuana factory, which just overwhelmed me with its size and scope, and the sheer volume of plants and the business that these people are doing. And when I met with the medical group there, they were astonished that I suggested that we actually have another crisis looming. So it's fascinating how we just continue to lurch in Canada from crisis to crisis without really anticipating what we're actually doing. But today, I want to talk about the digestive health crisis. It certainly isn't as obvious as dropping dead from an opioid, but it is actually just as serious, but it is a lot more nefarious and subtle. So these drugs called proton pump inhibitors, are the third leading prescribed drugs in Canada, with over 8% of Canadians using this drug. And actually there's over $7 billion worldwide spent on proton pump inhibitors. These drugs all end in, the chemical names all end in prazols. So everything that, if you look on the generic label of your drug, there's a bunch of brand names, but all of them end in the name omeprazole, something like omeprazole, ozemeprazole, rabeprazole, pantoprazole, and they have various brand names from Losec, Perriot, Pantaloc, and so on. How they work is quite well. They actually are incredibly effective at literally shutting down acid in your stomach. They will, when you take a proton pump inhibitor, it will shut the acid down in your stomach. But this has shown to be actually maybe not a good thing. When you actually shut the acid down in your stomach, a number of things actually happen that are adverse to the process of digestion. You actually change the physiology of the stomach, because when acid dumps into the small intestine, that acid surge triggers the release of sodium bicarbonate and all your digestive enzymes. You also change the whole, not only the pH or the acid-base balance of the stomach, you actually change the acid-base balance of the rest of the intestine, changing the microbiome, which we'll talk about later, which is that 2 kilos of very, very active bacteria, which has incredibly important effects on human health. So it's very interesting as we talk about that most of the time, people who actually have digestive problems in the stomach actually have a problem with the microbiome, where certain bacteria support the healthy lining and support digestion. And another problem that happens when you shut down the acid is, just think of your hand. You know, when you acid is like the callus of your stomach, and when you lose the acid, you use and lose the very, very thick mucus lining, and your scum becomes very fragile and delicate. And this is important to remember what happens over time if you stop these drugs, why you have to do it very carefully and cautiously, because it's not because you have too much acid, it's because the drugs have altered the very structure of your stomach. And what has happened many, many years ago, we, as a pharmacologist, we suspected that these drugs weren't going to do very well, and we were right. I would speak to rooms of people 20 or 30 years ago and actually ask, you know, how are people doing on these drugs? Is anyone's stomach problems getting better? And most people actually claimed or suggested that their problems were continuing to be the same or even worsening, and that continues to be the case today. So currently, the position statement of the Canadian Association of Gastroenterology says, don't maintain a long-term proton pump inhibitor for extended periods of time without actually trying to get off it, at least on an annual basis. And it actually even gets more and more specific. And in the recent, when I have these polls working, when I've asked people if they're on proton pump inhibitors, most people who come to these webinars are on proton pump inhibitors. And when I ask them how long they've been on them for, they've been on an average of about 7 years when we averaged it all out. People are completely unaware that the actual improved indication for use is that unless you have these 4 things, history of bleeding ulcer, GI ulcer, or a really serious history of your stomach bleeding, which can kill you, Barrett's esophagitis, severe esophagitis, which there's very specific ways to describe it, or chronic non-steroidal anti-inflammatory users with a confirmed bleeding risk, that unless you have these 4 specific things, you should never use a proton pump inhibitor for longer than 8 weeks. These are the clinical guidelines, and they have been the clinical guidelines for 25 years, yet the number of prescriptions for these drugs have skyrocketed and continue to skyrocket. They are being prescribed for any and all forms of stomach problems, stomach discomfort, with little or no, actually forget the word little, with no evidence to support effectiveness. And again, when we've done these polls, we've actually asked people, hey, have you ever tried to get off them? And most people have tried, about half of people have tried to get off them unsuccessfully. And again, we'll describe and discuss how to do, why that happens and how we're going to change that. Now, so what? Right, so I use this drug. It's an antacid drug. It shuts the acid down in my stomach. So what? Well, there is a big what. They actually increase your risk of kidney failure quite dramatically. They increase your risk of hip fractures. They actually if death is actually just recently, a study increased the risk of death by 1 in 500. But so what that means is that with the sheer number of users of proton pump inhibitors, the death rate makes these actually as serious as opioids. You also change the risk of certain infections, C. difficile, which is a very serious bacterial infection, where we actually don't even have antibiotics that work against C. difficile. I mean, the irony is of the work that I've been doing for so many years is that 30 years ago I said we can't use antibiotics for conditions where they don't work or shouldn't be used. We're going to reach a point where they are not effective against infections. Well, everyone, we are here, and C. difficile is one of them. Fractures, 26% in higher risk of hip fracture, 58% increased risk of spine fracture, and 33% increase of risk of fracture at any site. And this is even after short-term use of less than a year. Increased risk of pneumonia, acute increased risk of magnesium deficiency, B12 deficiency. There's evidence that it affects B1 use. It doesn't allow you to activate vitamin B6. Acute kidney disease, 50% higher in proton pump inhibitor users. Cardiovascular events. Alzheimer's disease. Again, the importance of the microbiome in the gut in how the brain is working is emerging in thousands of studies. A 40% increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. This alone is a disaster. Increased risk of allergies, and of course the ever-present dramatic change of the gut microbiome, which is emerging in thousands of studies to be a major predictor of quality of life and longevity of life. And of course, if that isn't enough, there's a whole list of other issues associated with disrupted gastrointestinal function. Everything from low energy and iron oxidation. So when people are on proton pump inhibitors, it seems to be universal complaint of low energy. Fibromyalgia now is associated with at 90% with not PPIs but altered gut dysfunction. Anxiety and depression. Anxiety is the highest rated mental health issue associated with digestive system disorders. Depression. Addiction. Addiction is fascinating. I just presented to the major conference in addiction the role of the microbiome and nutrients in the actual treatment and reduction of harm of serious alcohol and opioid addiction. So literally evidence that's proving the dramatic relationship of how you can change the process of addiction through the gut chemistry. Diabetes, so the blood sugar regulation is associated with and weight regulation, totally interconnected and regulated through the gut. Inflammation, I cannot emphasize how much inflammatory response. So all joint muscle inflammation, all these things can have dramatic and direct relationship to what's going on in your gastrointestinal system. Again, we mentioned the heart, And of course, food allergies. And food allergies, again, you know, in my day, when I was growing up, I never heard of somebody with a food allergies. Today, we have kids that are that we have whole fridges dedicated in the schools to adrenaline injections in case of anaphylactic reactions to foods. Where is this coming from? Well, the evidence is from the microbiome. And of course, links to Parkinson's disease and autism already have been well established linking to gut chemistry. So gut chemistry, gastrointestinal function is very important, and we are messing with it at our peril. And ultimately, when you line up all these things, you kind of go, well, you know, nobody wants to hurt anyone, but actually doctors and pharmacists and even society have been trained to use antacids. You know, for years it was sort of the antacid protocols. When I was young, everyone used antacids, but when they had digestive problems, you know, Tums, Malox. And then the Zantac type drugs, H2 antagonists, were discovered, and they were a big deal. And now we have PPI, so we just seem to be getting more and more efficient and at shutting the acid down, but we are also becoming a little more understanding of what we're doing. And again, it's simple, isn't it, right? We just give someone has a stomach problem, you take a Tom Zantac and now PPIs. But if you actually need to get deeper into that, pharmacists and doctors do not have the training in digestive system restoration. And again, these processes of antacids, Tom Zantac, and PPIs now are quick fixes, aren't they? They tend to just have a quick relief of that symptom. But again, when these things turn into long-term issues, you're not actually fixing the problem. You're making serious problems for the future. Now, the problem is that, as I mentioned, is that without stomach acid, the actual stomach becomes very fragile and very, if you can think of your hands with the callus, that it's very hard to actually to cut them. But if you actually cut your hands, and your skin becomes paper thin on your hands, and then you cut them, any little bit of acid, you can imagine, stings and can be very, very damaging. But you can, with an intact hand and no cuts and lots of callus in your hands, you can wash your hands in acid quite well. Thank you very much. So what does a deprescribing program involve? Well, our program has several phases. An anti-PPI specific diet, so diets to kind of heal the gut and that are clean and help restore some of the microbiome. We repair and heal the gut. So obviously, if the gut and the stomach is very fragile from the PPI, we have to heal it. We have to, as we're healing and repairing and allowing the stomach to heal, we have to begin to bring the taper down the PPI slowly. You pull it away too quickly, you get rebound extra acid. And you have to have some natural support. You have to have some tools that you can use for rebound heartburn or refluxing. And ultimately, you want to reestablish a robust and healthy microbiome. So it's quite fascinating. People that have been on these drugs for years, managing digestive problems for decades, is that these diets, and when we make these shifts, we usually are looking for responses within 30 days. And it's sometimes, just simple things, higher carbs, sugars and crappy foods, and have been associated with more severe reflux disease, more severe stomach problems. And it's already been proven that in a study of 12,000 patients, that if you change lifestyle, it makes a big difference in any reflux problems and stomach problems. And clinically, practically, we see big improvements in this first step alone. And this diet is essential, and people are welcome to work with one of our nutritionists. If you wish, you can get we can send you a copy of one of these diets. But ultimately, working through food, with one of our nutritionists or using one of these diets makes a huge difference in most of our patients. And again, it doesn't mean that you need to be on these food diets forever, but that makes a huge difference in being aware of the impact on food on your gut and how important it is in other issues of your life. The next phase, or phase that we do virtually all the time, is repair and heal the gut. So I designed some Health Canada approved products that we call exit products. They help you exit harmful drugs, and one of these is called GI Rescue, which has glutamine, a high molecular weight aloe vera, and zinc carnosine, and N-acetylglucosamine. So these combination of natural nutrients are shown to repair the stomach, restore the mucosal lining, put another monocell layer over top of this, so it really begins to accelerate the healing of the stomach, sort of going to the next phase. So we already got we got to look at your food, you start healing the gut, and then once you've done that, you just simply start tapering down the PPI slowly. And often it can be very simple, just one every third, dropping the third day dosing, then every second day, and then maybe once in a while, or whenever you need it from time to time. And again, success with between diet and these other products is almost assured. Any rebound that you get, so if you do have rebound during this process, sometimes this is what stops people from stopping their PPI. So again, the GI Rescue and DGL, or licorice tablets, is another option. We found we tend to use GI Rescue as being much more effective than anything we've seen, and we do use Zantac or antacids from time to time, just simply because PPIs are the most potent drugs, completely shutting down acid. So Zantac is a little less potent, and of course even less potent is classical, good old, antacid medication. But again, these things are often all that people need once they start to heal and repair. The next phase is crucial. It is re-establishing a robust microbiome. So again, in one hand, we are talking about just simply managing your symptoms of your gut. If you wish to actually improve all those inflammation, energy, weight regulation, mood, anxiety, you actually have to begin to actually shift your gut from an unhealthy structure, which everyone has on a PPI, to a healthy structure. And some of the elements that are very important are prebiotics. And again, just something like fiber. So prebiotics are soluble fiber. And soluble fiber doesn't go in your mouth and out the other end. It is fiber. Soluble fibers are used 100% as the food for healthy bacteria. And these fibers are 95% of Canadians are deficient in these soluble fibers. And it's easy to say why. For example, when an apple has 1 gram of soluble fiber, and the Canada Food Guide recommends 10 to 15 grams per day of these soluble fibers. And the power of this is when you actually start working, if you do, with one of our microbiome specialists, where if it's more involved, then certain things, just simple fibers, lock in the valuable changes that you've done with your diet and whatever. And of course, I had a woman the other day who was very concerned about cancer risk, and I just and I just said, well, are you just not aware of how fiber is proven to reduce cancer so dramatically, improve nutritional status, drop cholesterol, improve the absorption of nutrients, reduce gastrointestinal problems, gastritis, and again, something like simple like this is misunderstood. Probiotics. Again, 30 years ago, I was working with kids with autism, and I designed one of the first probiotics used in Canada. And again, probiotics are also very crucial in establishing the healthy microbiome. We actually know that certain bacteria in the stomach, healthy bacteria, actually regulate the acid-base balance and stimulate the healthy lining of the healthy mucosa. Certain fibers even actually stimulate this Clostridialis cluster 4. So literally the lining of the gut of the stomach is actually made by and stimulated by the effects of healthy bacteria. Again, there are different products that we use according to the nature and the intensity or the likelihood of other infections. If we think there is a C. difficile infection, we use different probiotics compared to where we think it's more basic, where we can just use certain standard strain probiotics. So again, when you work, you always get results, but sometimes you have to go a little deeper in the selection of probiotic. And probiotic selection is very important. There's 4 major structures in the healthy microbiome, and how you and the number of bacteria that are associated with disruption of the stomach, and the balance and regulation of those bacteria are crucial. Yet, when you fix it, it's super easy to maintain just with fiber. It's embarrassingly easy to maintain it once you get to a healthy gut. And I put this graph up because it's quite fascinating that what I observed, and remember, I don't just talk about this, I actually see patients, and that's what I do full time for, I guess, the last 25 years, is that what I've observed with people on PPIs, and then generally people who are on medications that we are deprescribing, is that they've been trained to react to crisis. You know, they're always dealing with the next symptom, and they trend, and especially if you're on a PPI, because it triggers so many other health problems that they're not even aware of, they're just actually reacting. And if you can look at this bell curve, they're always in the lower side of the average health because they're reacting to crisis. And the microbiome of the gut is so important for other systems, they just don't understand what's going on because they trend to go to doctor and accumulate more medication. So we see this unhappy person sort of in the crisis side, and it even gets worse because the actual drugs are keeping them there. And then if you go right to the whole other side, if you want to be in optimal health, and this is so important, emerging studies are showing that people that are in cultures who live to be 120 years old, whether they're in South America or Europe or Asia, they all 120, and their brains are working, they have no inflammation, they're mobile, they have all the same healthy gut microbiome as a healthy 20-year-old. I mean, and there's 30,000 studies basically linking microbiome to a variety of health conditions. So this is not unstudied science. It just means you have to be, if you want to get over to this side, you actually have to have a healthy gut structure. And the PPI is an absolute guarantee that you won't be able to get there. Now, again, so we do, so at NutriChem, again, it is interesting as a pharmacist that, you know, when I've spoken to meetings where it's pharmacists and doctors, often I brought up the fact that I said, well, maybe we're actually the wrong guys where people are actually going to deal with digestive problems. If we have no training in digestive problems, then it actually may not be the best first thing for you to go is to someone whose toolbox is a and virtually the only thing in their toolbox is a PPI, and you know, maybe that's the problem that we have, that we are funneled immediately into the medical system, which medicalizes digestive problems without getting into the lifestyle, diet, and nutrition and microbiome. And of course, in recognition of this, I feel that nutritionists and naturopathic doctors whose training is in this field are certainly the first choice when dealing with digestive problems. So again, at NutriChem, we do have a team of clinical pharmacists who think this way, naturopathic doctors and nutritionists dealing with these issues, and we look forward to ensuring that you're not in a PPI, and absolutely you have the best digestive health possible. So that's the end of this webinar, and if anyone has any questions, I would be pleased to answer them. And I guess how would you put them here?
Okay, so let's see here if we have any questions. So if you are interested in the deprescribing program, if you've listened to this and this is something you are interested in kind of getting more information on, you can email deprescribing@nutrichem.com. You can go to our website for details. You can always just go to our website too, give us a call, talk to one of our pharmacists. We do have a deprescribing coordinator. Adam Livingston is one of our, he's the deprescribing coordinator, so he'll kind of funnel you into the right direction for where to go in terms of the next step. All right, so we have a couple questions here. How should I switch off of lansoprazole? My pharmacist has suggested Zantac in prescription form.
Yeah, again, you know, obviously Zantac is a better choice than a PPI, but you're still missing the big opportunity, which is to completely change your gastrointestinal health with getting off these drugs completely. And the only reason, again, if you recall the only reason you should be on any of these drugs is for those specific reasons, which is risk of a bleeding, actual history of bleeding ulcer, Barrett's esophagitis, or severe esophagitis. And even with severe esophagitis, again, I have people going, well, I guess I should be on because I have a severe esophagitis. I go, yes, all it means that we have to fix your severe esophagitis before we start tapering the PPI, but the objective is still to heal the gut. So again, just switching off one antacid for another is smarter because it's less potent and less disruptive. But ultimately, the smartest is to actually heal and repair the underlying problem that caused it in the first place.
Okay, yeah, so that was the same question. All right, any other questions for tonight? You could just type them into the questions box. Oh, okay, let me just see here. All right, so I'll give everybody a couple minutes, see if there's some more questions. I know at the last time we did this webinar, there were some people asking exactly about that, if they had a diagnosis of, you know, Barrett's esophagus or that sort of thing. But like you said, it just tells us that we need to kind of just fix the gut first.
Yeah, you should be absolutely. Why wouldn't you want to have all these therapies that are safe, effective, and restorative in nature?
Okay. All right, so we have a question about peptides. Peptidase developed a rash, weaned off PPIs, so after they're weaned off PPIs, they're reacting to peptides.
Yeah. So what happens in an inflamed gut and in gastrointestinal system is that it does become leaky, and you will have more skin reactions, more food allergies, more sensitivities when your gut microbiome and your gut is unhealthy and inflamed, and you will be triggering all these systemic reactions And again, what's observed, and again, as we go forward, we're beginning to realize that food allergies, while there may be people that do have specific food allergies, that's true, but many of these allergies are actually symptoms of a disrupted microbiome and disrupted gastrointestinal system.
What about taking a PPI when you're using Mobic? I'm not sure of that acronym.
Mobic. What is Mobic?
Oh, meloxicam, an NSAID.
Okay. So meloxicam is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Again, these things are used. The PPIs are used routinely to prevent the risk of a bleeding ulcer caused by the PPI. Individually, we assess that risk. For example, you have to be very cautious. People aren't even aware that serious total body inflammation that these drugs are prescribed for can actually be caused by by certain bacteria in the gut that are pro-inflammatory. So actually working through the gut actually can reduce even the requirement initially for an anti-inflammatory drug. I cannot tell someone on a webinar whether, because of their history or not, whether they're at risk for a bleeding ulcer, because the history of a bleeding ulcer is dependent on the dose, the type of any inflammatory, and how long you've been using it, and your history. So, absolutely, but the routine use of these drugs all the time, automatically, of PPIs with anti-inflammatories is causing a whole pile of troubles.
All right. I definitely have leaky gut and about 45 food sensitivities. I will contact your offices for next steps. Okay, great. Sarah, here's the slide for the indications for use greater than 8 weeks. We also had another question, how do I get information on the diet? So again, just get in touch with email dprescribing@nutrichem.com, or you can call go on the website and get the contact information to talk to one of the pharmacists, and they'll be in touch so that that way they can individually actually send you a copy of the email and send you a little bit more information. All right. Any other questions?
I think
that's good. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, for spending your freezing Thursday evening with us, and you will be getting an email with the recording of the webinar. So thanks a lot, and have a great night.